Imagine walking through a frozen forest, the bitter cold piercing through your clothes. The silence is deafening, except for the occasional rustle of the wind. Suddenly, you see something that makes your heart stop, a massive grizzly bear, shivering, its powerful body tightly chained to a tree. Its fur is matted with frost, its breathing shallow. It looks at you not with aggression, but with desperation and fear. Who could have done this? And why? This is exactly what happened to Emily Carter, a woman who had spent years studying wildlife but had never witnessed such cruelty. What she did next would not only change her life but also defy everything people believed about grizzly bears. This is a story of courage, survival, and an unbreakable bond between a human and a wild animal. But what happened after she freed the bear will leave you speechless. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring and emotional story like this. Now, let's dive into this unforgettable journey. Emily Carter wasn't afraid of the cold. She had spent most of her life in the Alaskan wilderness, tracking animals, documenting their behaviors, and fighting against illegal poaching. But that morning, something felt different. Wrapped in her thick winter coat, she trudged through the heavy snow, her boots sinking with every step. The world around her was eerily silent, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then she heard it, a low, almost inaudible whimper. She stopped. Her heartbeat quickened. Scanning the area, she saw nothing but endless trees, their branches weighed down by snow. But the sound came again, a heartbreaking, weak cry. She followed the noise, her breath visible in the freezing air. And then, she saw it. A massive grizzly bear, but something was terribly wrong. The bear was chained to a tree, its body hunched, its fur coated in ice and snow. Its powerful legs trembled. Its breath was slow and labored. It had been left to die. Emily felt a lump in her throat. She had seen many terrible things in the wild, but this was pure cruelty. She took a cautious step forward. The bear lifted its head weakly, its eyes meeting hers. There was no aggression, no warning growl, just pain and exhaustion. Emily's instincts screamed at her, "Help him." But how? The bear was still dangerous. If she made the wrong move, she could become its next victim. But leaving it there meant certain death for the animal. Emily had to make a choice. And she had to make it fast. Emily took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the survival knife strapped to her belt. She had freed animals from traps before, but never anything this massive. Never a grizzly bear. Her breath clouded in the freezing air as she stepped cautiously forward. The bear's eyes followed her, wary, but lacking the aggression she had expected. It was as if he knew she was his only hope. Then, Emily saw something that made her blood run cold. The chains around the bear's body weren't old hunting snares or discarded traps. They were thick, metal chains, intentionally wrapped around his torso and legs. Someone had done this on purpose. Her stomach twisted in disgust. Who would do this? And why? The bear whimpered again, shifting slightly in the snow, his massive body trembling from exhaustion and hunger. Emily knew she had very little time before the cold completely overtook him. She reached into her backpack, pulling out a small bolt cutter she always carried in case she came across illegal poacher traps. But as she kneeled next to the bear, she realized the chains were too thick. The bolt cutter barely scratched the metal. Frustration boiled inside her. She needed a stronger tool, and she needed it now. The bear let out a long, shuddering breath, his head drooping lower. Emily panicked. Was he dying right in front of her? No. She would not let this happen. Taking off her glove, she gently placed her hand on his fur, feeling the icy coldness that clung to him. She could feel his labored breathing beneath her fingers, the slow rise and fall of a body that had almost given up. "Hold on, big guy," she whispered. "I'll be right back." She sprinted toward her snowmobile, her boots slipping against the ice as she ran. The moment she reached her vehicle, she grabbed her emergency toolkit, a heavier bolt cutter and a folding saw. The minutes were ticking away. Emily rushed back to the bear, who hadn't moved. For a split second, she feared she was too late. But then, she saw it. The slow movement of his chest. The slight flicker of his ear. He was still alive. She dropped to her knees in the snow and positioned the heavy-duty bolt cutter against the first chain. Gritting her teeth, she applied pressure. Her hands were freezing. Her arms burned from the effort. Snap. The first link gave way. The bear flinched, letting out a deep but weak growl. Emily froze. Her heartbeat hammered in her chest. But the bear did not attack. He merely shifted his body, tensing, as if anticipating more pain. Emily swallowed hard. And kept going. She worked as fast as she could, cutting through each chain, freeing him piece by piece. Every broken link felt like a small victory, but she wasn't done yet. The final chain was wrapped around his front legs, cutting into the skin, blood now frozen, crusted against his fur. Emily's hands trembled as she positioned the saw and began cutting away the thick metal. The bear let out a soft rumble, almost like a sigh, and then, finally, the last piece of metal fell into the snow. He was free. Emily stumbled backward, her pulse racing. The bear shifted, his muscles tensing as he tried to move for the first time in who knows how long. Would he attack her? Would he run? The grizzly lifted his head, staring at her. Then, slowly, painfully, he tried to stand. His legs shook, his body wobbled unsteadily, but he didn't collapse. Emily held her breath. This was the moment of truth. The bear turned his massive head toward her, their eyes meeting once more. There was no rage, no attack, only a silent understanding. And then, with one final look, he turned away and began to limp toward the forest. Emily exhaled sharply, her legs weak beneath her. She had done it. But one question haunted her mind: who had done this to him? And would they do it again? Emily stood in the snow, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts, watching the grizzly limp away into the forest. The thick chains lay scattered around her boots, their cold metal glistening under the weak winter sunlight. Her heart still hammered in her chest. She had done something incredibly dangerous, freeing a wild animal in distress, but she knew, deep in her gut, that she had made the right choice. But something wasn't sitting right. Who would chain a bear in the middle of nowhere? Emily scanned the area, her sharp eyes moving over the untouched snow. The forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of tree branches weighed down by frost. Then she saw it. Footprints. They weren't bear tracks. They were human. Following the trail, Emily dropped to a crouch, examining the footprints more closely. They were fresh, leading away from the tree where the bear had been restrained. Whoever had done this had been here recently. She clenched her jaw, anger bubbling inside her. There were a lot of hunters in these woods, but no real poachers, not that she knew of. Chaining a bear like that wasn't just cruel, it was unnatural. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. No signal. Typical. The thick pines and the remote location made it impossible to call for help. She'd have to handle this on her own. With a deep breath, she followed the footprints into the forest, every step crunching softly in the snow. Emily followed the trail for nearly 15 minutes before she spotted something else: disturbed snow, deep grooves, signs of a struggle. Her stomach twisted. The bear hadn't been chained there by accident. He had been dragged. Emily's throat tightened as she took a step closer. In the churned-up snow, she saw something half buried in the frost. She knelt, brushing the snow away until her fingers touched something metallic, a spent bullet casing. Her pulse quickened. Someone had shot at the bear. She swallowed hard, her mind racing. Had they intended to kill him and failed? Had they captured him for another reason? A sharp gust of wind howled through the trees, making Emily shiver. She knew she should turn back, but something inside her refused to walk away. She had to know the truth. She continued following the trail. As the minutes passed, the footprints grew more erratic, like someone had been moving quickly, possibly running. Then, through the dense trees, she saw it. A small, isolated cabin, barely visible beneath the thick layers of snow. Smoke curled from a rusty chimney, a clear sign that someone was inside. Her hands curled into fists. Whoever lived there had to be involved. Emily took a deep breath and stepped closer, keeping to the shadows of the trees. Her instincts told her to proceed with caution. As she got near the front of the cabin, she noticed something even more chilling. Hanging on the wooden porch were multiple animal pelts: wolves, foxes, even a massive black bear skin. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just a random hunter's cabin. This was the home of a poacher. And she had just walked straight into his territory. Just as Emily was about to step back, a noise from inside the cabin made her freeze. It was a low, gruff voice. Someone was talking. Her heart pounded as she crept around the side of the cabin, pressing her back against the wooden wall. She could hear them now, two voices, deep and raspy. She held her breath. "I told you," one voice growled. "The bear got loose. We should have killed it while we had the chance." Emily's blood ran cold. A second voice spoke, sounding irritated. "Damn chain snapped. Probably ran off by now. If we don't find it soon, it won't be worth a thing." Emily bit her lip to keep from gasping. They were looking for the bear. She pressed herself against the cabin wall, her mind racing. If these men found out what she had done, they wouldn't let her just walk away. And worse, they would try to track down the bear again. Emily knew she had to make a choice. Did she risk going inside and confronting the poachers, or did she try to get out of there and find the bear before they did? She had only seconds to decide. She took a deep breath, her fists tightening. She knew what she had to do. But she had to act fast. Emily's mind spun with possibilities. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. She was alone in the middle of nowhere, outside the cabin of two dangerous men who were actively searching for the same grizzly bear she had just freed. She knew one thing. If they found the bear first, it would not survive. Her breath misted in the freezing air as she pressed herself closer to the cabin's wall. She couldn't stay here. She needed to find the bear before they did. A creaking floorboard inside. Suddenly, she heard movement from inside, a heavy pair of boots thudded against the wooden floor. Then a voice. "Let's head out now before the storm picks up," one of the men muttered. Emily's stomach clenched. If she waited too long, they'd be on the move. She had to go. Now. She took a step back from the cabin, careful not to make a sound, and darted into the tree line, back into the wilderness. The cold wind cut against her skin as she moved deeper into the woods. Time was against her. She tried to retrace the bear's path, looking for signs of movement, any broken branches or tracks in the snow. The forest was vast, and the bear had been weak and exhausted. It couldn't have gotten far. Then, a set of paw prints appeared in the snow. Her heart leaped. She followed them, moving quickly but carefully. The deeper she went, the more signs she noticed, small patches of disturbed snow, claw marks against tree bark. The bear was injured and slow, but it was still moving. Emily clenched her fists. She had to reach him first. The howl of a wolf. A long, eerie howl echoed through the trees. Emily's blood ran cold. Wolves. She knew these forests well enough to recognize a hunting call. Wolves were predators. And a weak, vulnerable bear would be an easy target. Emily's feet pounded against the frozen ground as she picked up speed, ignoring the burning in her legs. The prints ahead were still fresh, leading up a narrow hill. She was getting close. Then she saw him. The bear lay collapsed in the snow at the top of a small ridge, barely moving. His massive frame was hunched, his breath labored, his fur still damp from the snow. His eyes were half open, clouded with exhaustion. Emily felt a lump in her throat. He was giving up. And the worst part? The howls were getting closer. "Come on, big guy," she whispered, stepping toward him. "We have to move." The bear lifted his head weakly. His ribs showed through his fur, and his legs trembled as he struggled to stand. Emily reached out carefully, keeping her movements slow and steady. She knew she couldn't force him to move, but she could help. In a desperate attempt to save him, she pulled off her backpack, grabbed a protein bar, and tore it open with her teeth. She extended it toward the bear, hoping the scent would stir him. His nose twitched. She prayed he had enough strength left to eat. The bear inched forward, taking a hesitant sniff. Then, with shaky movements, he took a bite. Emily let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. He was still fighting. But they weren't safe yet. The danger was closing in. A snap of branches in the distance sent her heart into a frenzy. She whirled around, eyes scanning the trees. Something was coming. It could be the wolves. It could be the poachers. Either way, she was running out of time. She turned back to the bear. "Come on, buddy, you have to trust me." With a groan, the bear pushed himself up, his muscles shaking. Emily felt a surge of relief. But then she heard it. A gunshot. Her body froze. The poachers were closer than she thought. She grabbed a fallen tree branch, tossing snow over it to mask their tracks. She knew she couldn't stop them completely, but she could at least buy them time. She turned back to the bear. His legs wobbled, but he was standing. He had one last chance to escape, and Emily wasn't going to let him face this alone. "Let's go," she whispered. "I'm getting you out of here." With one last glance behind her, she led him deeper into the forest. The air was biting cold, and the wind howled through the trees like a warning. Claire's breath came in short, misty puffs as she hurried through the dense forest, each step crunching the snow beneath her boots. The grizzly bear was still bound to the tree, shivering violently, its massive frame unnaturally frail from exhaustion and exposure to the elements. The sight broke her heart. The ropes had dug into its skin, leaving raw, bloody marks around its thick fur. Its breaths were slow and ragged, each exhale accompanied by a weak mist that vanished into the freezing air. It didn't even have the energy to struggle anymore. Claire dropped to her knees beside the bear, her hands trembling from both the cold and the overwhelming rush of emotions. She knew she had to act fast. Her fingers fumbled as she pulled a knife from her jacket. The knots were tight, deliberately cruel. Whoever had done this wanted to ensure that the bear wouldn't escape. The thought sent a surge of fury through her veins, but she pushed it aside. There was no time for anger, only action. She pressed the blade against the thick rope and began sawing furiously, her muscles burning from the effort. The bear flinched slightly at the sensation, but it didn't have the strength to resist. The thick, coarse strands refused to break at first, each cut feeling like a battle against time. Claire's fingers were nearly numb, but she didn't stop. After what felt like an eternity, the rope snapped. The grizzly let out a deep, exhausted groan as its massive body slumped forward, freed, but unable to move. Claire quickly pulled her jacket off and draped it over the bear's shaking form, knowing it wasn't nearly enough to keep it warm but hoping it would provide some comfort. She reached out slowly, placing her palm gently against the bear's head. Its deep brown eyes flickered open, filled with something she never expected, trust. It could have attacked her. It should have, by instinct alone. But instead, it let out a low, weak huff, almost as if acknowledging her presence, accepting her help. Claire swallowed hard. She knew this wasn't over. The bear was free, but it was still dying. Its body was far too weak from dehydration and starvation. It wouldn't last much longer in this state. She had no idea how much time she had before it was too late. Her mind raced. There was no way she could carry the bear, not even with every ounce of strength in her body. It was too massive, too heavy, too weak to even stand. She needed help. Claire pulled out her phone with frozen fingers and dialed frantically. Nothing. No signal. A wave of panic crashed over her, but she forced herself to breathe. Think. She had to get back to the main road and find help, but she couldn't just leave the bear here alone. She knelt beside it once more. "I'll be back. I promise," she whispered. The grizzly's labored breaths were slowing. Claire's chest tightened. She had minutes, maybe less. She had to run. Her legs felt like they were moving on pure adrenaline as she sprinted back through the snow-covered forest. Slipping. Falling. Pushing herself back up. Every second felt like a lifetime. She had no idea if she'd make it back in time. And she had no idea if the bear would still be alive when she did. Claire's lungs burned as she sprinted through the snow-covered forest, each breath a desperate gasp. Every step felt like a battle against exhaustion. Against time. The bear needed help, and she was the only one who could make it happen. Her boots sank into the icy terrain, slowing her down, but she refused to stop. Her legs ached, her muscles screamed for rest, but the image of the freezing, helpless grizzly tied to that tree fueled her desperation. The main road wasn't far. But was she already too late? Bursting through the tree line, Claire spotted her truck, parked haphazardly on the side of the road. She fumbled for the keys in her jacket, her hands shaking violently from the cold and adrenaline. Her fingers barely worked, stiff and numb, but she forced them to obey. She jumped into the driver's seat, turned the ignition, and the engine roared to life. Wasting no time, she grabbed her phone and tried again. No service. "Come on," she growled, slamming her fist against the dashboard. There was only one option left. She threw the truck into drive and floored the gas pedal, speeding toward the nearest ranger station. The tires skidded slightly on the icy road, but she kept control, her knuckles white as she gripped the wheel. The ranger station was nearly 6 miles away, and every second counted. The image of the bear, its sunken eyes, its trembling frame, the scars that marred its once powerful body, haunted her. She couldn't let it die. As soon as she reached the ranger station, she practically jumped out of the truck before it had fully stopped. Rushing inside, she saw Mike Carter, the senior ranger, sitting behind a desk, flipping through some paperwork. He barely had time to look up before Claire slammed her hands down in front of him. "I need help." "No." Mike frowned. "Claire, what's going on?" She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself enough to explain. "There's a grizzly tied to a tree, freezing to death. Someone did this on purpose. It's barely alive. I need a rescue team." "No." Mike's expression darkened. She quickly gave him the location, and he didn't hesitate. Within minutes, the entire station was mobilized. "Take the truck," Mike ordered, grabbing a radio. "We'll bring supplies. Claire, you lead the way." Relief flooded through her. But the fear never left. Was she already too late? The convoy of vehicles raced through the forest, the headlights cutting through the darkening evening sky. The snowfall had picked up, making visibility harder, but Claire's focus was unshaken. She led the group back to the clearing, her heart pounding in sync with the tires hitting every bump on the frozen ground. The second she reached the site, she jumped out of the truck and ran toward the tree. Her breath caught. The bear was still there. But it wasn't moving. "No, no, no," Claire whispered, sprinting toward it. The rescue team followed close behind, flashlights illuminating the grizzly's still form. Claire dropped to her knees, placing her hands on the bear's head. It was cold. "Please," she murmured. Then, a shallow breath. He was alive. "Get the sedative ready," one of the rangers shouted. They needed to transport the bear safely. They couldn't risk further injury. Claire backed away as the team worked quickly, expertly. They carefully injected a mild sedative, just enough to keep the bear calm but not too much to harm it further. Next, they wrapped the grizzly in insulated blankets to preserve its body heat. A makeshift stretcher was prepared, strong enough to carry its weight. It took 6 people to carefully lift the bear, maneuvering it onto the transport sled. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. He was going to make it. The next hour felt like an eternity. The rescue team transported the bear carefully, keeping watch over its breathing. The vet was already on standby at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, waiting with fluids, medication, and the best care possible. Claire sat in the back of the lead truck, watching the bear through the rear window. Even in this vulnerable state, even after all the suffering, he was still fighting. "Hang in there, big guy," she whispered. As the trucks pulled up to the rehab center, the veterinarians rushed out. The bear's fate now rested in their hands. The moment the truck stopped in front of the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, the team sprang into action. The bear, still wrapped in thermal blankets, lay motionless but breathing. Claire jumped out of the vehicle, her heart hammering against her chest. This was the final battle? 2 veterinarians, Dr. James Carter and Dr. Olivia Hart, were already waiting at the entrance. Their faces were grave, but their hands were steady. "Let's move," Dr. Carter commanded. The team carefully lifted the bear onto a mobile gurney, ensuring its weight was evenly distributed. It took every ounce of strength from 6 people to wheel the massive animal into the facility. Claire followed closely, watching as the doors to the emergency treatment room swung open. She wasn't allowed inside. All she could do now was wait. Claire paced the hallway outside the treatment room, rubbing her arms for warmth. The walls of the clinic were lined with photographs of animals that had been saved, rehabilitated, and returned to the wild. Would this bear's story be added to those walls one day? Time dragged on. She sat, stood, paced, and sat again. Every passing minute felt like an eternity. Finally, after what felt like hours, Dr. Hart emerged from the room, pulling off her gloves. Claire rushed to her. "How is he?" Dr. Hart gave a tired but reassuring smile. "He's stable." But it was close. Relief flooded Claire's body. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He had severe malnutrition, dehydration, hypothermia, and multiple old wounds, most likely from past mistreatment. "But he's a fighter," Dr. Hart continued. "We've given him fluids, treated his wounds, and started a refeeding plan." Claire nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Can I see him?" Dr. Hart hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "For a few minutes. He's still sedated, so don't expect much movement." Claire followed her into the dimly lit treatment room. The bear lay on a thick padded mat, tubes running from his body to monitors that beeped softly in the background. His once matted, frozen fur had been cleaned, revealing deep scars along his back and legs. Claire knelt beside him, her fingers grazing the soft fur near his massive paw. "You made it," her voice was barely a whisper. The bear's chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. He had fought so hard. Claire clenched her fists. Who had done this to him? The collar. The scars. The fear in his eyes. It all pointed to something sinister. "We'll find them," she murmured. "And we'll make sure this never happens again." Dr. Hart placed a hand on her shoulder. "We've reported the case to local authorities. If there's a history of abuse, we'll do everything we can to track down who did this." Claire nodded. It wasn't enough to just save this bear. She needed justice. Days turned into weeks. The bear, affectionately named Kodiak by the clinic staff, slowly regained his strength. At first, he could barely lift his head. But soon, he started standing. Then walking. His once dull, lifeless eyes began to shine with renewed vitality. Claire visited every day. She watched as Kodiak took his first steps outside the enclosure, cautiously sniffing the air. His ears twitched at the sounds of the wind rustling the trees. It was as if he was remembering what freedom felt like. For the first time, he wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was healing. The day of his release came sooner than Claire expected. Dr. Carter called her early one morning. "It's time." Claire's heart clenched. She had known this moment would come, but was she ready? She arrived at the release site, a protected wildlife reserve where Kodiak would have a second chance at life, away from harm. The large transport crate was open, and for a moment, Kodiak hesitated. He turned, locking eyes with Claire one last time. She held her breath. Then he stepped out, first cautiously, then with more confidence. And then, finally, he was gone, disappearing into the trees. His home. Claire smiled through her tears. "Be free, big guy. You deserve it." Kodiak's story didn't end there. The investigation into his abuse led authorities to an illegal wildlife trafficking ring. Several arrests were made, and more animals were rescued from captivity. Claire had started this journey to save one bear, but in the end, she helped save many more. As she stood at the edge of the forest, listening to the distant rustling of leaves, she knew Kodiak was out there, thriving. And that was all she needed to know. If this story inspired you, remember, kindness and courage can change lives. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share this story to help spread awareness about protecting wildlife. Together, we can make a difference.